Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Mythical Madam Podcast, your bi-weekly dive into myths that outlived the people who first whispered them. I'm June, your host and guide through tales that cling to the edges of history, slip between cracks in the present, and occasionally brush the past when you're sure you're alone. Welcome to the Mythical Madam, my little corner of the internet where we sip on a bit of curiosity and wander into the eerie, the haunting, and the beautifully strange. So if you're ready for a little chaos, a little darkness, and yes, plenty of my unsolicited thoughts along the way, get cozy and settle in wherever you are. Welcome to the Mythical Madam Podcast, where we share the myths, the mysteries, and oh yes, the mess. By the time this episode reaches your lovely ears, Halloween will just be around the corner. So consider this my early treat to you. Not the kind wrapped in ribbon and paper, but the kind wrapped in whispers and shadows. The sort of thing you might not expect to find in your candy bag, sharp-toothed, wide-eyed, grinning like it knows something you don't. In fact, some collectors swear that the mischievous little figure known as Labubu is actually a modern cutesy disguise for today's guest, Pazuzu himself. Allegedly, of course. Though, once you see the teeth, the eyes, and that grin, you might start connecting the dots yourself. This one has been circling my list for a while. And somehow, October felt like the right time to finally let it land. We're leaving the human nights of the Philippines in our previous episode and stepping into the scorching winds of ancient Mesopotamia, into the domain of Pazuzu, a figure feared and revered in equal measure. The demon you prayed would never come for you, yet might have begged to arrive that something worse was at your door. And here's the twist. He's not the monster you think he is. Not exactly. Welcome to episode 12. Picture this. It's late at night in the heart of the desert. The wind has a bite to it. Dry, sharp, almost like it's carrying whispers from somewhere far away. The stars are bright, but the darkness between them feels like heavier than it should. You duck into your tent or close the shutters of your clay brick home because the air tastes like dust and something unseen is moving with the wind. Not walking, not running, gliding, watching. In ancient Mesopotamia, the presence had a name, Pazuzu, a demon king with the body of a man, the talons of an eagle, the tail of a scorpion, and a face that even the bravest priests approach with caution. He was the desert wind personified, the kind of wind that carried plagues, famine, and misfortune. But here's the twist. People didn't just fear him, they invited him in. Because in a world of worse evils, Pazuzu was the one you wanted on your side. He could banish demons, protect mothers and infants from harm, and send your enemies into a coughing fit that might just keep them bedridden for days. And if that duality feels strange, terrifying destroyer by night, unexpected guardian by necessity, well, that's exactly what makes him one of the most enduring and misunderstood figures in mythology. The kind of legend that makes you wonder whether that grin on Labubu's face is really playful or just Pazuzu enjoying the long game. Pazuzu's story begins in the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia, sometime around the first millennium BCE. His name appears in Akkadian inscriptions, carved into stone and pressed into clay tablets, often alongside depictions that were, let's just say, memorable. Imagine a hybrid of man and beast, a gaunt, muscular body, the claws of a bird of prey, the tail of a scorpion, 2 pairs of wings, and a face that was part lion, part canine, part nightmare. The name Pazuzu likely comes from Akkadian roots, Pa being a personal or divine name marker, or Zuzu possibly tied to wind or movement. In other words, he wasn't just a demon, he was the wind. Specifically, he embodied the southwest wind, considered in Mesopotamian thought to be the one most dangerous, hot, dry, and capable of carrying disease across entire cities. But here's the twist that has baffled and fascinated historians for centuries. Pazuzu wasn't worshipped like a god, nor was he hunted like an enemy. Instead, he was contracted, summoned, even invited into the home. His job? Protect you from something far worse, the demoness Lamashtu, terrifying figure who preyed on pregnant women and infants. Sound familiar? In the last episode, we met another night hunter with a taste for the vulnerable, though she flew under moonlit rooftops, not desert winds. When Lamashtu was near, people would place amulets of Pazuzu over their beds, hang his face above doorways, or carve his image into talismans. Now, let's think about this for a moment. You're not just tolerating a demon, you're decorating your house with his face because the alternative is that much worse. It's the ancient equivalent of keeping a guard dog that occasionally growls at you, but also keeps the wolves away. And here's where Halloween comes in. Pazuzu's image was meant to scare off other demons, but you can imagine what it did to unsuspecting guests. A snarling, winged figure glaring from the beam of your doorway? Instant trick and treat. In the world of ancient Mesopotamia stretching across the empires of Assyria and Babylon, Pazuzu's presence was less about worship and more about survival. His image appears on bronze amulets, carved stone plaques, and cylinder seals dating back as early as the 8th century BCE. Archaeologists have found his likeness in homes, burial sites, and trade outposts, especially in regions where wind and illness were constant threats. He wasn't the kind of figure you see presiding over temple altars or leading processions through the city streets. Instead, his power traveled light. A scrap of bronze shaped in his face might ride in a caravan across the desert. A small figurine could be tucked beneath the bed frame. A weathered carving might watch silently from the lintel of a city gate. All quiet sentinels against the invisible threats carried by the wind. His reputation was never built on mercy. People didn't invite him into their lives for warmth. They did it because his ferocity outweighed the horrors that stalked them. Chief among those horrors was Lamashtu, a demon we previously mentioned infamous for targeting mothers and infants. A carving of Pazuzu above the bed or doorway wasn't there to soothe. It was there to send a message. Cross this threshold and you'll face something far more dangerous than yourself. Modern audiences may know Pazuzu from his unsettling cameo in the movie The Exorcist. But for the people who first carved his image, he wasn't a horror movie villain. Ancient Mesopotamians would have recognized him instantly as someone you kept close. Not because you liked him, but because you needed him. One of the oldest stories about Pazuzu doesn't start in a temple or a marketplace. It starts in the open desert, where the wind could turn from harmless to lethal in a span of an hour. The southwest wind, in particular, had a reputation. In Mesopotamian thought, it wasn't just a weather pattern, it was a carrier of disease, famine, and death. Hot, dry, and relentless, it could sweep through cities and leave silence in its wake. People feared it the way you might fear an unseen predator. You can't fight it. You could only hope it passes you by. According to legend, there came a season when the southwest wind grew wild. It wasn't just scattering dust, it was poisoning the air. Crops withered before they could be harvested. Livestock collapsed in the fields. Families huddled in their homes praying for relief. That's when Pazuzu appeared, not in the form of a savior riding in with the gentle rain, but as a force meeting force. His arrival was a confrontation, a standoff in the sky. The Demon King battled the wind itself, subduing it and forcing it to change course. And when the air cleared, the people weren't under any illusions. They didn't thank him out of affection. They thanked him because they'd rather live in the shadow of a predator than be torn apart by something worse. It's the kind of story that's less about heroes and villains and more about understanding your options and realizing that sometimes survival means picking the monster you know. For all the myth and menace wrapped around Pazuzu's name, He wasn't just a ghost of storytelling, his face still stares back at us from the ground, the walls, and museum glass cases. Archaeologists have uncovered Pazuzu amulets and figures across what is now Iraq, Syria, and parts of Iran, many dating back from the early first millennium BCE. And they're surprisingly consistent. A gaunt, human-like body with taloned feet, a scaly torso, wings stretched wide, and that unmistakably snarling face, canine jaw, bulging eyes, and that curled horns of a predator. On the back, inscriptions often served as both identification and instructions. I am Pazuzu, son of Hanbi. I drive away the evil wind. Not exactly subtle branding, but very effective. Artifacts show up in telling places, buried under thresholds to guard the home, in graves to watch over the dead, even tucked into trade goods that traveled far from Mesopotamia like ancient insurance. They weren't mass-produced trinkets either. Each one was made by someone who believed enough in Pazuzu to spend the time and skill. Placing him in a doorway or a traveler's porch wasn't decoration, it was a choice. Let the demon in so nothing worse could follow. Most people know Pazuzu today because of one infamous possession movie, but Mesopotamian folklore gives him far more range. And some of it is even stranger than the headlines. One Akkadian tablet tells of a year when not one, but 7 plagues rolled across the land. Crops rotted in storage, water turned brackish, and a fever griped entire towns. According to the story, Pazuzu appeared at a city gate, but not as an attacker, but as an uninvited negotiator. He demanded the right to stand watch over the walls. The city elders, likely terrified of saying no, agreed. By season's end, the plague had faded, but so had much of the city's livestock. Whether that was payment or opportunism, the record doesn't say. In another tale, Pazuzu is said to have intercepted a caravan traveling at night through the desert. Instead of robbing them, he whispered into the wind, altering its course so it would blow at their backs the rest of the journey, speeding their passage. The catch? Every member of that caravan was later bound to carry his image on future trips, ensuring his shadow moved along Mesopotamia's trade routes for decades. And then there's the rumor, part archaeology, part ghost story, about a temple in northern Iraq where a single Pazuzu head was buried upside down in the foundation. Some scholars say it was to pin his power in place, keeping watch over the structure. Others believe it was meant as a warning. We've trapped him there, don't disturb the stone. The problem? No one knows what happened to the head. The temple was excavated in the early 1900s. The artifact went into a private collection and has never been seen again. These aren't the sanitized myths you put in children's books. They're reminders that in the ancient worlds, lines between enemy, ally, and the prisoner were just as shifting as the desert winds Pazuzu claimed to control. Now, before we close the door on Pazuzu, let's wander into the stranger corners of this legend. First, his name. Pazu in Akkadian means to see, but not in the casual I spotted you in the market way, more like the sharp, unblinking watch of someone who never misses a movement. If your guardian looked like that, you sleep with one eye shut and the other on him. His lineage is equally eerie. As the son of Hanbi, the elusive king of demons who left behind almost no stories, he's part of a family tree with more shadows than branches. Then there's the craftsmanship. Some amulets shows Pazuzu's fierce grin on one side with protective inscriptions or tiny hidden figures on the back. A few even have suspension holes worn against the chest like a private security system with claws. And here's the modern twist. While the Exorcist movie turned him into pop culture's boogeyman, ancient Mesopotamians saw him as the monster you hired to keep other monsters away. Which makes it all the more settling when you hear whispers that his face, softened, shrunk, and made cute, might live in on something we all know today as the boo-boo. If there's a thread in Pazuzu's story, it's this. Sometimes the scariest thing is exactly what you need on your side. To the ancient Mesopotamians, protection didn't always wear white robes. Sometimes it came with claws, horns, and a smile that dared anything worse to try its luck. That's why he endures. He's not comfort or promise. He's a reminder that survival can mean siding with what terrifies you, if it terrifies your enemy more. What makes Pazuzu stick with you isn't just the horns or the wings, it's that uneasy truth he carries. Protection and danger can sometimes be the same thing, just facing it in different directions. And he's not the only one who plays that game. Somewhere in the deserts, under cold stars and shifting winds, his shadow is still out there, in stories, in museums, maybe even in the quiet corners of your own imagination. So, as Halloween creeps closer, think of him when the night air changes, when the wind rattles the windows just enough to make you pause. Keep your charms close, your lights low, and your courage steady. Some even whisper that Pazuzu's shadow survives in far stranger places, hiding behind the mischievous grin of the boo-boo. Trickster wearing a mask of cuteness. Maybe it's just coincidence, or maybe he's been watching us all along from the toy shelf. Happy early Halloween, and next time we'll leave the desert for a kingdom of marigolds and candlelight. November brings the Day of the Dead, and with it, Mythical Akashi Watto, the queen who rules the underworld with a painted skull and a watchful smile. She's the reason the celebration can happen at all, and the reason it must end. I'm June, and this has been the Mythical Madam. Some doors only open once a year, and next time, we're walking through one of them. I'll see you next time. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure to leave your comments if you're listening on Spotify. Don't miss out on a single episode. Episodes dropping bi-weekly, so make sure to subscribe on the show on Substack at Mythical Madam and my YouTube channel. The Mythical Madam is produced and edited in partnership with Andy Lara at sunfacemedia.com. I'm incredibly grateful for the collaboration and support in bringing these stories to life. All of this and more linked in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.